So hello everyone and welcome to our new Artist of the Month interview. I'm here with Brian Gibson, who I think holds kind of every title at Outside In you can imagine, from kind of artist to ambassador. So it's great to have him with us. So Brian, if you'd just like to start by kind of telling us a bit about yourself and your work, if that's okay.
Okay. Well, I started off always being creative, um, but the idea of becoming an artist was just seemed to be out of my radar or whatever it was. So, but I've been making art for a long time now. Um, I went to do a degree in fine art as a mature student. Um, I found that doing the degree course was quite difficult. Um, Not because of the actual work, but I think it sort of set me off somewhere else. I went into therapy when I was doing my degree. Um, After that, I've been involved in Outside In since 2011. First of all, on their step up programs, and I've been doing workshops, and I've also been exhibiting work as well. And yeah, so that's kind of a brief summary of what I do.
So have you kind of made peace with calling yourself an artist now?
Not really. No, no, I haven't. I, yeah, I just have lots of issues around being an artist. I don't know why, but it's one of those things. Um, yeah, I can't really. It's quite kind of quite. I think because I think a lot of the time I've had to sort of like do other jobs. So I've never actually made a living out of just making art by itself. So I think there's always been, that's the cat's button knocking on the door, but well, not knocking, but scratching if you hear it. No, so I've always had to sort of make art kind of whilst working.
Yeah.
So the only time well, even when I was doing as a mature student doing the degree, I had like two jobs, part-time jobs as well to keep me going.
Yeah.
So there's always that thing about not being a legitimate artist because I can't, I simply can't afford a studio. I can't kind of I'm not making a living out of art. So yes, it's still a
Yeah.
bit of a
To be honest though, I think some of the most interesting art is the people that also exist in the normal world at the same time. I think
yeah,
there's something that
yeah,
comes from
yeah.
that. And it certainly sounds like, if even if you don't necessarily call yourself an artist, you've definitely compelled to create things. That seems something that's definitely inbuilt with you.
Yeah, I am kind of like, yeah. I mean, there's different layers of being what an artist is, isn't there? So I think I'm not on that layer of being an artist. And I don't know why it's there and there, but
Yeah,
that's
no, one of those questions, isn't it? So I suppose
I think it's
how,
based on income.
yes, very much so. And that is the way with
Yeah,
the arts, isn't it? You do it because you love it, not because it's going to make you rich more often than not. So in terms of,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, in terms of the things that you create then, would you say you have a particular style or a particular area that you like to work in?
No, I think what one of the things about being creative is it's given me the freedom to move in whatever direction I want to go in. So I think that's not a problem for me. I think it's maybe a problem for other people sometimes if I kind of keep switching from one thing to another. So I'm not kind of, and I noticed that a few times. I haven't stuck to one particular medium or one particular theme or whatever. So I've kind of tended to. I mean, it's just great to be able to go like, oh, I fancy doing some oil paintings now, or doing photography and things like that. So those overlap and things like that over time and things like that. So
Yeah.
um,
So what's
yeah,
the motivation for you then? Are you creating for yourself? Do you think of an audience? Kind of what drives it?
Um, I don't think I think about an audience a lot. No, but I think what drives it is a kind of um, it's a safe place. It's a kind of space where I can be me. I can kind of explore myself and the world. It's a way of, I think, in a lot of ways, it's a way of navigating through life. So
Yeah.
kind of, it's a tool to, in a way, the process is more important than the actual finished work.
Hmm.
So it's the process that gets me through difficult moments or whatever. You know what I mean? Are kind of things that I get preoccupied with. So it's a way of parking things, navigating, getting through to, I'm still here, which is, yeah,
Yeah,
which is a bonus. So
definitely.
uh,
And I think it is that it's nice to enjoy the process, and then kind of by the time you're finished, you are finished. You're on to the next thing mentally as well, aren't you? So
yeah, and I love that thing about when you make a piece of work and it works, and it's it's kind of there in the world. Sorry, I've got a bit of a sore throat, but it's kind of like creating something which has never been there before, never existed, and then all
yeah,
of a sudden you've got something which is kind of, I'm not interested in preserving it forever, but just that thing about you've created something is kind of quite fantastic.
mm. No, and it seems like your next project is very much kind of inspired by exploring and process and everything, with looking at technology and the role it plays in art.
Yeah, well, I've managed to get a hot desk space for 6 months to kind of do some research on the relationship between art and technology. Really, I did a couple of workshops over the sort of lockdown period and things like that, and one of the things that came out of it was that the pandemic and kind of technology like Zoom sessions and things like that has really opened things up for people who, you might see a cat jumping over the screen in a minute. Um, I'll just, oh, still there. So that, why did it take a pandemic? With Zoom and things like that, the kind of everything became a level playing field. So like people could watch operas, bands playing or whatever, or get involved in workshops, which weren't kind of just marginal activities for like a few group of people. Like anybody could, they had there was like a free series of Laurie Anderson lectures that you could watch. And you didn't have to be part of Harvard University. You didn't have to, and I think that was great. And then there's the kind of thing about people are talking about getting back to normal. And I think for a lot of people, there never was a normal. There was, people's lives are kind of like an erratic CV. They get interrupted by stuff. There's gaps and things like that. There's not this. And I think with technology, there's this kind of thing about it. I mean, one thing, digital acceleration, but it's this kind of like just continuous fast speed kind of progressive thing about, we do one thing and then we go to the next and next and the next. And whereas kind of art is kind of just about, like slow art or whatever, it's about looking at something. You have like a painting or a picture and you've had it 20 years and then you see something new in it, or you just see it, you've known it for 20 years or whatever, and you kind of, all of a sudden it kind of regenerates itself, and technology doesn't do that. And so I'm interested in that, but I'm also interested in the way that, say, big technology and AI kind of nudge people in different directions. And I've already been involved in outside in for a while, and that whole thing about people facing barriers in the art world. I mean, the technology world. I'm doing this project, but really, I'm completely out of the loop in terms of technology.
Mm. Yeah,
So that's
it's hard with technology, isn't it? Because obviously, as an organisation, we found the last year we've been able to have a lot more access to things and offer
yeah.
our artists a lot more access to things. But you're constantly aware that with every door that opens, for someone else, it might be another barrier to go over in terms of missing out if they're not online. So it is a constant kind of juggle, isn't it, between with every good, there's a potential negative as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't understand when your, hard drive is full of data and how to remove it, what do? Things like that, which, you get like technology people, there's not a shop in town where you can go to and say, I've got this with my computer, I don't know what to do. I don't think there is anyway. There's not that kind of help. You have to go online to speak to a bot first to get through to the next thing, and then it takes 3 days before something happens, and then
Yeah,
um
that
and
kind of
all the issues around isolation and addiction to technology and things like that. And it's all about kind of it's kind of seen as the great wonderful thing that kind of enlightens people, but it's almost like at a cost of, I don't know, kind of making screen prints. You know what I mean? The process of making a screen print
yeah,
or something like that is kind of, you know,
yeah.
it's
I think
tactile and manageable.
it's rarer that you get your hands dirty with technology unless it goes really wrong, isn't
Yeah, but
it?
it's clean. It's, people talk about websites being clean and everything like that. Everything has to be kind of clean, and I don't live in a clean world.
No. So,
Well,
so what are your hopes? Because that sounds a lot to unpack in 6 months. What are
I
your
know,
hopes
I know,
with this project?
I know. Um, I guess because I'm not an academic, so I'm kind of. I think for me, it's kind of just a way of maybe connecting with one or two other people who are kind of thinking along the same lines and kind of saying like, well, hang on, yeah, and then kind of like joining the dots up. So
Mhm.
I think with the lockdowns and the whole last year or whatever, the sense of isolation is quite big and things like that. So I kind of think it'll be good to sort of, I'm really interested in other people's opinions and what people have got to say about technology and art. And also it's about like who controls who makes the technology, kind of,
Yeah.
you know,
Sounds like you're kind of putting the human back into it, if anything.
well, I hope so. I hope
Yeah.
so. I hope it's just, for things to become ordinary and have a bit of um, input. And then I think sort of, people who are, there's a lot of people designing things for people, but maybe, it's what people on the ground or whatever you want to call it, kind of what do they want from technology,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And like you say, I think connection is a very key word, isn't it? When it's people's usage of it, people's connections with other people, and then the connection between the technology and the users as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think you're going to be busy, definitely.
Yeah. It'd be interesting being in a kind of academic environment where I'm not really an academic person, so I'm not, again, that's another language or whatever, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So
Kind of like a code of its own, which seems quite fitting, doesn't it?
yeah, I mean, one of the things I struggled with when I was doing my degree was the whole art talk thing and the way it alienates people and
Mm.
the way you have to kind of write rubbish biographies about yourself or about your work and things like that, and you have to explain it in ridiculous kind of ridiculous language and things like that.
Yeah. No, I think that is the hard thing about studying art. I had a lot of friends who did the most amazing artworks, but couldn't do the sketchbook research side of it to back it up. So they never got the grades that their amazing art deserved,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you kind of had to do both in order to tick the boxes.
that's right. Yeah. Well, what got me into therapy was that I started making stuff, and at the first crit, I couldn't speak about it. Partly because partly because I knew what it was about, and partly because I didn't have a clue what it was about, and I'd kind of just thought, I really don't know what this is about, and I couldn't kind of, to talk publicly in front of a bunch of people, like other students and all that. I just couldn't. I didn't want to talk about it for a start, and then kind of that sort of compulsion to kind of put yourself out there, and I love that kind of thing about being able to make stuff without necessarily divulging my stuff,
Yeah.
but putting
Well,
my stuff out there.
and I think part of it is hearing what other stuff it brings to the surface for other people that are looking at your work. If you think, this is definitely a fork, and they go, well, actually, it reminds me of this spoon or this
Yeah.
childhood memory, or it's not about making it black and white sometimes, is it?
No, no, no. And I think everybody kind of gets something from looking at art. But I think people who look at art kind of just go kind of you know um, it affects them in different ways, doesn't it? Everybody gets affected by different pieces of artwork, and sometimes you can kind of like not notice a piece of artwork, and then all of a sudden, sometime later, it kind of just you think that was amazing, that.
Yeah.
And I do like that kind of thing.
I think that's what a lot of people have missed, haven't it? Is that exposure to art, that staring in, sitting in front of a sculpture or a painting for half an hour, and you might not see anything else in the gallery, but that's the one that's kind of
Yeah.
got your soul and you can connect with it. I think, yeah, we're all hungry for that again, definitely after the last
Well,
few.
I don't know, because I haven't gone into an art gallery yet. I'm really reluctant to. It's like taking that first step to go into see an art gallery and things like that. I went to a couple of gigs a couple of weeks ago, a week or two ago. I went to 3 gigs in 4 nights,
Wow.
and it was like just a very strange atmosphere about people who were like there but like not there, and reluctant and things like that. But I haven't stepped into an art gallery or anything yet.
Biding your time. Got to find the one that was worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think you've been involved with some of our online events, haven't you, as well? Kind of.
Yeah, I was part of the doing hosting, part of hosting the uh, extraordinary workshops up in with Glasgow Museums, doing that remotely down here, and that was amazing. That was absolutely brilliant. It was just so good looking at the artwork there and the work of the artists, and the whole kind of just debating the concept about Jocelyn sort of taking these pieces of art, whose collection it was, taking her art, taking the artwork, finding the artwork, taking the artwork, why the people were making the artwork, which directions it would take the people who were participating in the course, how that artwork affected them and things like that. So one of the things which was really exciting was looking at the work of somebody who was wandering around Scotland, and they'd been put into a psychiatric hospital, but they'd been doing embroidery, which was kind of like random sort of lines and things like that. But somebody else on the course was making like a random walker technology with code. And rather than, so they were very similar in terms of process in a way.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is what that person wanted to then go back into doing some embroidery. using a random walk. So like the random walker was the kind of template, and then kind of they would use the, so that's another reason why I'm interested in technology, about it working backwards.
Yeah, and it's been so fascinating with the patient artwork projects, because obviously it's about collections and objects and things, and then the first courses have had to run exclusively online. So there's that kind of technology enabling a connection with the collections, but at the same time kind of being a bit of a wall between, so you can't touch and feel the amazing objects. And I think that's been something to navigate as well for the artists that have taken part, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that'll be changing soon, that people can actually see the objects and things like that. I was amazing how, I think because of it was over 10 weeks exploring the collections, so it was amazing how those 10 weeks you kind of learned to, and there wasn't like an exam or anything like that. It was amazing how you could kind of connect with certain artists and things like that, and certain artworks, and and the way they affected you. You
Mm.
know, I think everybody who partook in the course found an artist or more that resonated with them.
Yeah.
That was really powerful, that.
And yeah, well, it's been amazing to hear back from artists saying, these people I would never have met in normal life, these artists, whose paths I wouldn't cross with, and I might not have been able to get to the museum every day in terms of, the logistics and people's own access requirements. So, I mean, that's been really special to knock all those things aside and just be able to get on with it, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And then there was somebody who made somebody from the collection who made their artwork indoors and in the house, and were kind of putting photographs inside coffee jars and that. And it was an amazing body of work, and yet kind of they, if it was Marcel Duchamp, it would be kind of like hailed as great art. But it's kind of just kind of gets sidelined as kind of, oh well, it's a marginal activity of somebody who is kind of living in a flat in Scotland, some Glasgow, I think, kind of.
Yeah.
It's very different, really, isn't it? It seems to be. You kind of look at something like Marcel Duchamp with great reverence, and then you kind of go like, "Oh, that's just somebody who's quite cranky doing, you know, sort of sticking photographs into coffee jars."
Yeah. It
Yeah,
makes you kind of want to work out the difference between the two equations, doesn't it? Which way was the wind blowing for Duchamp versus, what type of day was it? What are we looking at to put one
yeah,
here and one here, kind of?
yeah. That, I think it's frozen there, but sorry.
Oh, sorry, I think my internet might be playing up, which is ironic when we're talking about technology helping things.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to see what the 6 months brings you to. So I hope you'll keep us posted with the journey it takes
Yeah,
you on.
definitely. I mean, I've got my website. So hopefully what I want to do is I create some kind of forum on the website where people can kind of where I can update people with what's going on in the blog, and then people can contribute to that. So I'd be very interested in other people's views about how the technology has impacted on them, and the positive and negative aspects for them.
Yeah,
So,
that's definitely something we can help with, and we can share the links and everything. So
yeah.
yeah, thank you for introducing us to it, and kind of excited to see where the adventure takes you, really, Brian.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun and work.